Thank you very much, Kate. Some big topics that was covered in 45 minutes. Should be some ground for discussions in the break following the next session. They touched upon some of the aspects of data, and I guess not only in wellness is data the big holy grail. How do we use data to monetize, and how do we use the data to monetize in this particular industry? The next panel is a good mix of established tech companies and also some groundbreaking new companies. And this session is moderated by a veteran in the industry. So, David, please enter the stage.
Please. I don't want to do it all on my own. Jeni, hi. Hi. Two more?
You have to go to them.
No, but no.
Don't say that.
Hamish?
Yeah,
hi.
I'm
Hi.
here,
I guessed.
anyway, go to your panel.
And
Hey, nice to see you guys.
and one more. One more? Okay. So whilst Rabin is being kitted out, let me start by saying Professor Ahari was on Newsnight last night, and he has said that for 70,000 years, Homo sapiens have been the smartest algorithm on the planet. But as we all know, that's about to change. And we have some of the brightest minds that on the panel here, and of course one of the biggest companies in the world, that we're going to talk about big data. And collectively, we're all putting that big data in to this huge cloud, and ways in which we can monetize it varies enormously. We obviously have the small and the great here. So what I want to do this morning is actually start with a real startup, and that's Hamish, who is the founder and CEO of Thriva, who launched just in June. Tell us about Thriva.
Yeah, that's right. So we're definitely the small end. I'm probably sitting next to the great end. So Thriva has a very simple mission. We want to make it really easy for anyone to understand what's really going on inside their bodies. And that's motivated by really one sort of key insight, which is that most people live their lives in the dark as to what's happening beneath skin deep. And you don't have to think about it very hard, right? Most people deal with their health reactively. They wait until something goes wrong, and then they go and see a doctor and find out what's happening. And we're setting out to try and change that by making it really easy and really affordable.
And continuing on the health front, Rabin, welcome. Anyone who gets investment from DeepMind must have a great idea. Rabin tells us about Babylon Health.
Thanks. So Babylon Health is a personalized mobile healthcare service. We combine over 100 GPs, specialists, and therapists with technology and AI, which is where the investment from the founders of DeepMind, not DeepMind itself, was very helpful, to basically democratize healthcare and make it universally accessible and affordable to anyone, anywhere. And what we're trying to solve is really the problem. What we're trying to do for healthcare is kind of like what Google did for information, which is exactly that, to make it accessible and affordable. We're in the UK, where we have over 250,000 registered users on the app. We're also in Ireland. And very excitingly, we're launching in Rwanda in November, where the problems of getting access to healthcare are even more exacerbated than the ones that you see here. In the UK, the issues around trying to see a GP takes you 2 weeks. Sometimes it takes you 1 hour just to get an appointment. And in Ireland, for example, you pay 70 euros for an appointment. In Rwanda, there's hardly any access to healthcare. There's maybe one doctor to every 30, 40,000 people. So what we're trying to do is create a very cost-effective and very accessible way to not only intervene and help people when they get sick, which is really what healthcare is today. It's about sick care. It's not about healthcare. But to also do some of the stuff that Hamish does with Thriva is to actually help people live healthier lives, which is ultimately how you solve the problem of healthcare. The healthier you can keep people, not only do you make them as individuals healthier, but you also then take a lot of the cost out of the system. And if you think about it, 80% of the cost in healthcare is really in secondary care, doctors, hospitals, prescriptions. And by keeping people healthier, you also fix the system itself.
And Jamie from PayasUgym was one of the earliest aggregators in the fitness market. Tell us about how you did it.
Yeah, so we're an aggregator or online fitness marketplace, and what we do is get customers to the right gyms in the slickest, easiest possible way. As Humphrey was saying, we offer flexibility. We offer a range of products for each of those gyms, so our customers can select what they want. The options are there. And our sort of fundamental belief from the customer side is if we can improve the user experience, we can grow the market. More people will, we can grow participation. On the operator side, we're a source of new revenue, new customers, obviously. But really where we want to develop is into an insight hub. So learning from the customers that go through our system and how we can help operators improve their own business.
We'll pick up on some of those points later, but let's introduce Jeni now. And Jeni, you have a wonderful title of Lifestyle, Health and Fitness Partnerships.
Yes. So as you can see from my title, I work with quite a wide range of partners who really have some really great Android apps distributed via the Play Store. And my team's job is to really help make sure that they reach the right users and also provide some best practices on how to actually monetize that as well. So it's not just about making sure these great health and fitness startups with really good products, making sure that they're successful in markets that we're already live in, for example, UK and so on, but also how do we help them reach new opportunities, for example, in emerging markets where we're going to see Android continue to grow. For example, in the next 2 years, we expect over 1 billion new users on Android with access to smartphones. And really my job is to help kind of connect the two, so the developers to the users, and help empower them to have successful businesses.
There's probably never been a more exciting time to be working in across the health and fitness market.
Yeah.
So my first question has got to be, do you see that there is opportunities for collaboration between the health and fitness market as more data is being collected by both sides?
Yes, absolutely. I think they're part of the same and sort of holistic way of trying to keep people healthy, but also intervening when you're sick. I think what the gyms are doing, obviously, is trying to keep people healthy. What we're doing through data and predictive analytics is actually similar to what Hamish is doing, trying to capture as much data about an individual that then allows you to not only analyze what state of health you're in, but also what you can do to make yourself better. And one of those things, obviously, is going to the gym and live a more active, healthy life, in addition to other things like nutrition. So these are all parts of the same whole. And I think you're seeing an enormous amount of innovation in healthcare today, as opposed to maybe 10, 15 years ago, where you saw disruption in areas like media or commerce. And one of the reasons is that healthcare, as such, is a much more complex, much more regulated industry, and things just have taken a lot longer for technology to really start playing a significant role, particularly in healthcare, which I think is different than fitness and well-being. I mean, those things, they're part of the same story, but they're two different things, because healthcare is really about the intervention of sickness, using data to keep you healthier, and then the health and well-being part really complements that.
And Jamie, do you think, again, because you've been involved in the fitness part of it, and you've now got over 2,500 sites connected to the system, and again, you're gathering lots of data, and although I want to come back to how you're working with the operators more, how do you think that you could be working with the other side of the panel?
I mean, I think in health and fitness, I mean, it's relatively in its infancy in terms of data collaboration. What we're saying is it's siloed in health, siloed in fitness, siloed in nutrition, gathering lots of information. But there was lots of discussion in the last panel for millennials, and where I think we will go is developing much more tailored products, and not tailored products just specifically for health, not specifically for fitness, but a completely 360 view of somebody's life. So, if we can collaborate better, then we're able to deliver on all those elements of well-being.
And Hamish, being the new boy on the block, so to speak, health has always been rather sceptical about the fitness side of things. Have you come across any of that in the few months that you've been operating?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been live for a couple of months, but working on the business and staying close to the industry for the better part of a couple of years. And to answer that slightly in the round, I think health is hard, right? People they rely on habits to function, and actually getting people to adopt new behaviours is, for any of us in health or fitness or well-being, it's a challenge. And yeah, absolutely, there is certainly a perfect world in which you've got a holistic 360-degree view of how a person is and does. And the challenge that some of the fitness guys face and some of the nutrition guys face is actually connecting the data to the action. And we touched on it, or the panel touched on it a little bit previously. And certainly our view is you need the joined up view of a person before you stand a meaningful chance of getting them to behave differently. And to answer the question specifically, that's where the integration becomes a prerequisite for success. I don't think you're going to persuade a millennial to give you all of the access to the information to one provider. I think it will be bifurcated across a range.
Jeni,
Yes.
I'm always fascinated by the fact that Google know every health search that takes place across the world. And what does it do with all that information?
Well, I think what I'd like to do, especially in terms of the collaboration piece, for my remit especially, it's really about the Google Fit API, and I guess it's similar to the Apple Health Kit, being able to take all of that data from the smartphone sensors about that user, get a profile about what they're doing, have they been exercising, what's their sleep quality like, and then what we're doing with, for example, the Google Fit API is empowering developers to use that data, taking it from other developers, sharing it, and seeing a holistic view of that user. So as an example, one thing that we've seen with our partner LifeSum, they can actually see, using the API, if that user has just completed weight training, obviously a very intensive exercise. They can then use that information to say, oh, it looks like you've just done some intense exercise. How about taking a protein shake to help reboost your protein levels? So it's really not just about grouping the data together, but then providing actionable insights. And that's something that is still in its infancy. And I think what's really exciting is as more and more startups come on board, launch their own apps, make use of different sensors on the phone, I think that's a very exciting place. And that's not just Google, but it's available for everyone, just to really identify these new use cases.
I think also the important thing is that fitness is only one part of health. I mean, health is about the environment you live in, your behavior, which is fitness, but also do you smoke or not, et cetera. It's about your genetic makeup, and it's about your biology. So increasingly, we're able to collect data across all those four segments, whether it's genetic data, whether it's your sort of biological data, which is what you and I do, which is the fitness data around. And then it really becomes around creating the underlying engine and the predictive analytics that can take that data and actually make it meaningful, and not just do simple things like say, the protein shake, but actually say, you have an X% risk of heart rate, because now we can also look at broader populations and create whole graphs of people with similar type of cohorts and similar types of behaviors and similar type of geographies, and create a lot more intelligent, predictive analytics for you as an individual, which you can then act upon immediately, which is health, which is fitness as well, but also is nutrition, is your lifestyle, is where you live, et cetera.
There's one bit of health you didn't mention there, which was mentioned in the last sit-down, which is mental health. And I just wonder if Babylon has looked at that.
Yes, so we also offer GPs, specialists, as well as therapists, and actually, so basically you can have a consultation by voice or video with any one of the three. And mental health is incredibly big for us because A, it's increasingly something that people are, it's more destigmatized, people are willing to access it. It's obviously a problem. I mean, we do a lot of work with corporations where we offer Babylon to their employees as a benefit, and every corporate I've talked to, whether it's Google, where everybody has, bouncing balls and free food, or whether it's, a construction site, their biggest issues around stress, depression, and anxiety. And the ability to access a therapist remotely is actually a use case that works really powerfully, because one of the biggest blockages for people to actually get therapy is just picking up the phone and making an appointment, just not even knowing where to go, just getting on the tube and having to go across town to see a therapist. And when they can do it from the privacy of their own home, it takes all that friction out and it solves the mental health problem as well.
And Jamie, can we come back to the data that, because you have almost reinvented yourselves over the 5 years, 6 years that you've been going, and now you have, you're able to open up your data and feed that data back to the sites so that they can actually see the reactions of the consumer. Do you want to just explain a little more about that?
Yeah, I mean, really at the basics of how our business works, we are imagine this as a shopping aisle for the undecided fitness purchaser. Somebody who's looking for a gym but hasn't decided where to go yet. So as a new customer coming into our site, user experience dictates we will not ask them questions, but we need to get the right product in front of them as quickly as possible. So what information do we use to make sure we get the right product for that customer? And when we don't know that customer, well, we use historic behavior from other customers. So we look at performance. We have an algorithm that runs and pulls out daily data. We look at the last 14 days. So what we're showing that customer constantly changes. That's not the easiest thing in fitness, and especially with gyms, because location is such a big factor in that. So then a customer comes back in again after they've used us a few times. We've got more information. Now, do we put the gyms or the services in front of them that they've used before? Well, maybe not. Maybe they didn't have a good experience of that. So we start looking at the experience they have and start learning from the trends and the information they've given us. A little bits of information every time somebody uses us. So our view is to improve the marketplace through user behavior. And then we took a step back earlier this year and said, well, to improve the marketplace, we need the operators to respond to the customer. So if there's a problem with customer service, there's a problem with pricing, there's a problem with products, they can react to that. And also, views we don't want to dictate the operator's strategy. The operator should dictate their own strategy and how they want to interact with our marketplace. So essentially, what we did was create what I call a pure marketplace. We gave the tools to the operators, you control everything. You control your prices, you control the products you offer, you control the photos, you control absolutely everything. You can speak to our customers through a feedback system. So it's up to you.
This is the Airbnb of fitness.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complimentary comparison, and I'll take that. But yeah, I mean, but it's all about, marketplaces should in themselves make the industry better and grow. So we can't do that just from controlling it from our side. We need both sides of the equation to be working to grow and improve the overall marketplace.
But as far as I'm aware, you're the first aggregator to actually do that in this field.
Yeah, I think we're the first aggregator to give complete control to the operators. And there's obviously a lot of insight and analytics in there predicting what would happen if you change prices, if you added other products. And that's evolving. It's not perfect yet. It's been, that side of the business has been operational for about 4 months. So we're still looking back at the algorithm. We're looking back at the images and fixing that all the time and getting that right. But yeah, we're the first one to say, okay, this is a marketplace for operators. This is a marketplace for customers. Operators look at marketplaces, it could be a scary thing. Are they taking business away from us? So we're trying to say, okay, well, this marketplace is for you, is to drive your own strategy. Use it how you will.
And Jeni, Google obviously has a history of doing things like that.
That's true, yes.
And so could you just explain a little more about the health section within Google and the fitness section within Google?
Well, for my specific experience, it's really about the Android apps that are in the health category. So I can talk a little bit about how we're approaching growth from health from a Google perspective, but obviously that's less within my remit. So obviously there's Verily, who are a new segment of Google. We're doing a lot of work there to really try to pioneer some new technologies, but there's not as much that I can actually share about that at the moment.
Right. And Hamish, what could you share with us on how Thriva's developing in the first few months?
Sure. Yeah. So so Thriva it's a finger prick home blood testing kit that you order online and it arrives at your house, and you basically end up with a bespoke report from a doctor. The insight that we're trying to, or rather the thing that we're trying to empower, is that people don't live their lives like this, right? Like, la, 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 I'm just going to ignore my body and kind of plow on regardless. And we're trying to connect people. So we've only been live for 2 months. We've got hundreds of paying customers already. And actually the thing that we've learned is people, when they first heard our message, they kind of came back to us and said, hey, Thriva, the thing you're kind of telling us is that increased utility comes from increased frequency. You've got a problem with your product, because we kind of had this idea of really a sort of one-off insight, but with recommendations after that. So we're now pushing live, probably within the next little while, a subscription product. And that's about keeping track of actually 4 key beneath skin-deep areas of your body that everyone should be kind of engaged with and in touch with.
Can I just have a show of hands on who has tracking devices, used tracking devices on a regular basis? Oh, wow. We're definitely the early adopters here. So, Rabin, with all the tracking devices that people are using, do you also get them to sign up so that you can have access to that data?
Yes, so we integrate with over 100 different wearables, apps, whether it's Google Health app, Apple S Health, and then obviously your Fitbits and everything. And for us, I mean, we're really sort of the aggregator of all that data. We also do home blood testing kits like Thriva does. And I mean, the idea behind, for us, it's really about taking that data and then adding the intelligence to it. And the analogy we like to use is that of cars. So if you think of cars 20 years ago, you'd be driving down the motorway and suddenly your engine would blow up in smoke and you'd be sitting on the side of it and you had no idea something was about to go wrong. And that just doesn't happen anymore with cars, because they're equipped with so many sensors that they capture everything that is going on in the car, and they will always alert you in advance that something might go wrong, so you can take care of it before the problem becomes too big. Today, your mobile device is effectively like a sensor to your car. So the more data that you can capture across all those different areas of health, and then add predictive intelligence to that, the more we can tell you in advance that some things go wrong, particularly when you start doing that across broader populations as well. And the fact that we can now collect all this data, not just from your phone, but from all these different devices, helps. But that's still one of the bigger challenges, is how do you, like, for example, the blood testing kits, a lot of the clinical data that we need is still, you require, blood or urine or, but what we're seeing is that a lot of the transformational innovation in phones, other than losing headphone jacks, is actually happening in health. And if you think of things like breath analysis that can capture a lot of things that otherwise you would need clinical vitals for, if you think about voice analysis, that's very important for mental health. And a lot of the devices that today are kind of separate, blood pressure measurement, et cetera, ultimately they will be integrated into phones. So you'll have a phone at some point that acts as a sensor to your body, like the sensors you see in a car. And that then is able to track data on an ongoing basis. And the more data you can track of yourself, and then as these predictive algorithms get more and more intelligence because they start learning, you can literally start predicting if something's going to go wrong before it does. And that really solves a problem in healthcare, because the more healthy you can keep people and the less sick they become, the better for the system overall.
I just want to pick up on the point about wearables as well, and I just wanted to talk about an example from one of our partners called Progression. It's a really great example of actually going beyond the phone and being able to provide really timely insights during a fitness session. And what it can do is just by automatically tracking how you're moving your arms, it can provide you, as if it's your own coach, tracking the number of repetitions that you've done within that exercise, and then helping actually improve your form. So I think one thing that I find really interesting is moving beyond the phone. How can smartwatches and uses of that technology actually bring the data to the user at the right time? And it's not just about collating this massive amount of data and then just throwing it at the user, but actually deciding what the right use case is and then saying, okay, here's how to improve your exercise regime. Getting that information to the user at the right time is key.
Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the way we see the future going, we're not into the wearable space. We're not collecting that data. We don't intend to be. Data is useless unless you know how to use it. So for us, our vision is being able to use that data to prescribe or to give the right fitness to somebody. So predictive data is really key to say, okay, your joints are suffering because of this. Okay, right, this is the type of exercise you should be doing. So we're delivering on the exercise. We can deliver fitness to anyone in the UK within a mile. So if we can understand the individual, and we've talked a lot about tailoring fitness or tailoring the user experience to the individual, then we'll be able to deliver on that. You call it user experience, call it conversion rates. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make sure that user converts. And if you can convert that user by tailoring a solution, and that's by getting data from all around you, pulling it in and delivering a customized solution.
And your product also helps generate habits. And as we know, habit forming for exercise is really important.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think so. I think we've got a long way to go in really driving that forward. Our big focus for a long time has been making the user experience from I've decided I want to get fit and I want to go to a gym to being in the gym as seamless as possible. So that's now moving on to habit forming. How do we create habits in the individual? And I don't think that's purely from tracking how many sessions did you do. There needs to be a lot more information than that to say, okay, this is how we create a habit. And that information is also health information, not just fitness.
And do you all currently have personalised push notification, or is that something that you're developing?
We do have personalized push notification. I think that gets more and more intelligent. So the big benefit that we have is that we have a predictive algorithm and analytics, but we also have 100 actual doctors that work for us. So rather than try and have artificial intelligence that just learns from itself, we have actual clinicians that deal with patients every day that then feed that information into it. So you have this loop between humans, very qualified humans, and the machine. And the machine starts learning from the humans. And as that gets more intelligent, and as we scale the population of people that are using the platform, we can then get much more accurate, personalized plans for you as an individual. So already today we have push notifications that tell you what you should be doing based on your clinical monitoring, but that just keeps getting more and more intelligent and more personalized as the machine itself gets more and more intelligent.
I think on the push notification piece as well, some apps that I've seen that have done a really great job of not just using that technology, but trying to understand what actually motivates the user or the consumer to do the exercise. So, for example, Strava RunKeeper, there's that social element that's kind of baked in, and being able to rely on not so much peer pressure, but knowing, okay, one of my friends has just run 10 kilometers. I feel I should definitely do something similar, but also being able to send that notification to the wider community saying, I have achieved that. It really helps users really feel like they've achieved something. And then with Strava, they have like King of the Mountain badges. So you can achieve this badge that no one else can, and then you get that kudos as a part of it, which I think is very motivating in and of itself, and goes back to the idea of how to form habits and what techniques can developers use to really motivate these people.
And let's talk a little more about social media. We know that the fitness industry are pretty dreadful, on the social media front. Very few of them have Instagram accounts, very few have Snapchat accounts, Facebook and Twitter are the most popular. But how important is social media for all your businesses? Well, miss out, Jeni.
It's for us. I mean, so we offer the platform to consumers. It's free except for if you want to see a GP. It's only £5 a month subscription, or you pay £25 a month for a pay-as-you-go appointment. We also offer to corporations, and then we work closely with governments like the NHS and Rwanda as a first step into Africa. And so obviously when we're going directly to consumers, our marketing strategy is no different than that of most apps. So we leverage digital media, branding, as well as social media as well. It's an important part of what we do, but it's not the be-all and end-all of how you acquire consumers for a healthcare app. I mean, we're not a photo sharing app. We're not something that people are just willing to share, their clinical data. And it's not a fitness app where people are saying, "Look, I just ran, 15 kilometers." I mean, it's a much more intimate experience when you're talking about healthcare and the kind of data that you have with healthcare, because people are dealing with their problems, not showing off how good they've done something. So it's a very different type of user engagement that, to some extent, lends itself to social media in order to, make people aware that we exist and get people onto the platform. But then it's not the kind of platform that people willingly are going to share the experience with others, because it's a very personal, very intimate one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we exactly like Rabin, both the guys on my right and left who go after user acquisition through social channels are like us in that respect. We're trying to test something with social. People, typically with Thriva, they're either at home or at the office when they're using our product. They exist in a silo. They are in their own little personal bubble. Sometimes they want to stay in that bubble. But increasingly, we're finding that certainly our millennial audience are more willing to share at an aggregate level, and they're more willing to share what probably older generations think of as quite intimate health information. And in part, it's about the sort of the social proof peer pressure thing of, hey, I've just taken control. For us, it's about connecting that idea of sort of sharing the fact that you've taken taken control, you've taken a step forward, and being proud of that. And candidly, we're still experimenting with exactly where people draw the line themselves with how much they're willing to put out there. It's helpful commercially when people share that, so it broadens the net and broadens your reach, obviously. But it's also a critical component of how people ultimately end up changing their behavior. That's why chunking and unlocking in those gamification modules that sit in most good behavior change apps are there. So that's how we think about it.
We probably get less sharing from millennials. We get a lot of sharing from mothers, because they go through the experience, because you can also add children. So we get a lot of mothers that go through the experience of having the child have a consultation, or themselves have a consultation, and then telling all of the other mothers what a great experience they've had. So for us, it's more, the social piece is more about people sharing how great the experience is, as opposed to sharing the actual results of the actual data itself.
I think on the social side as well, one thing that I'm seeing a lot, especially with Instagram, is users who potentially have used an app such as London Muscle. It's a weight training regime, bikini body plan, for example. They upload photos of their progress, for example, from week 1 to week 4, week 8, with complete strangers, just a photo of them in their bikini, showing how much weight they've lost. And I think it's that idea of connecting with people that you might not necessarily even actually know, but to highlight where you've come, and it's going back to that motivational aspect. And then on the other side of social, I think, being able to use technology, whether it's social media or inviting friends to a particular app, it really helps grow that awareness. And with smartphones, you can contact people across the globe now. So if there is a global product, if it's really really helping with a key user need, people can share that to anyone across the world now.
Social for us, I mean, as an acquisition tool, I'm not so sure about social channels. As a referral tool, I think it's fantastic. However, your referral conversion rate is always stronger through personal referral than through social channels. I think it's a good brand awareness tool, but I think the more useful thing is understanding customer trends. Instagram is fascinating, and like you're describing, people are building up their own brand profile through social tools. And by understanding how brand profiles are being built, you can understand consumers, you can understand consumer trends. So I think that's where the real insight and information comes. And again, it's predictive. Where is the market going? What are people interested in? It's real-time information. Harnessing it is difficult, absolutely. But I think that's where it's most useful.
Can I open it up to the floor now? Are there any burning questions for the... Yes.
Hi, great insight. I hope it's not a stupid question. Any data is as good as the quality of the data itself. I just wondered if there's anything being done, in that area. Say for example, even food. Now food security is a major issue. I haven't seen any startup looking at toxicity of food, etc. So it's the input of the quality of data, accuracy of the data. And then also analysis, I guess Google future could be that, my kid could create the best algorithm to analyze my data, through you, but I don't know how far that might be. Thank you.
I think food, by the way, is, if you think about how much work is being done in tracking and monitoring and making passive data collection really easy in fitness, actually food is still way behind. It's because it's hard. So if there are people working on it, let us know. Because we're also trying to work with people where there's good data. And that's the challenge, where it's not passively collected, where Babylon have done an amazing job of being able to harness the data that it's inherent in the thing in your pocket to make it interesting and relevant in a particular context. Food really struggles in that respect. So, yeah.
I think it's a constant cycle when using data. Yes, you need to make sure it's accurate, but your accuracy can always be improved. Then looking at how you're using it, and saying, okay, I've got the data on the other side. So you test and learn from that data. So your interpretation of that data, your analysis of that data, how effective was it? Test, A/B test, move on, test again. It's just a constant improvement cycle.
And I think also that's another area where you're seeing a lot of innovation in the technology. I mean, today you can measure your blood pressure and your heart rate with wearables and devices and even attachments to your phone, but they're probably not going to be as accurate as what you can see in a GP practice that costs a few £1,000s. But if you look at the cost of everything else and how it's gone down and how smaller and how compact it's become, I completely believe that you will have the same quality of measurement tools either within your phone or attached to your phone that can give you the same quality of data that today you will only find in a hospital and a GP practice. So that's just a question of time where the quality of the data that you capture, which of course is critical to having the right outputs in the end, is going to become better and better, just like everything else within technology is improving.
And from our point of view, the more data we collect and analyse, the more questions it raises. So the more data we want to collect and analyse. Next question. In the corner? At the back?
Hi, nobody's talked about ethics of data collection and data analysis. Does the panel have anything to comment on that?
Let's start with the medical side.
Ethics, information governance, data security, clinical governance, they're all at the very core of what we do at Babylon, and I'm sure what you guys do at Thriva. I think if we didn't have the most robust sort of governance around these things, we wouldn't be in business, because we act effectively as a virtual clinic and we collect data that is very sensitive. So everything from the the security teams that we have in place, the way we secure the data on servers, how they're encrypted, who can access it. Even within our own organization, there's only very few people that are allowed to access that data, only on the clinical side. We have all the necessary precautions to ensure that that data is safe and secure, and the data is owned by the patient. It's not owned by us, it's not owned by the GP, it's solely owned by the patient, and the patient is giving us the right to use that data to help them do what we need to do, but they also have the right to own that data and take it away. So it doesn't function differently than data functions in the NHS or other areas. It just happens in a more virtual environment that we believe is a lot more convenient and allows patients a lot better access to a lot more services that are similar or better quality a lot more quickly.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You know, the thing that Humphrey on the previous panel was talking about, this idea of what technology is actually changing, it's really just shifting the onus to the companies that are trying to solve those problems. But ultimately, the level of scrutiny that we, as the people who harvest and store that information, have to be put under, it's entirely justified, and it's why it's at the core of the businesses that we run.
Next question? At the back.
Hello, hi. Thank you very much for all your talks. I was coming back to data again, actually, and the quality of data, and actually the opposite problem, and I certainly agree with sort of big data and the importance of it, is sometimes actually having high quality data can create more problems and create more investigations. For example, if you look at high resolution MRI scans and how actually having natural variants which then need to be investigated, need to have operations, and so for the end user that can actually create more complications and more cost. So how much thought is there on that part of this as much as anything else?
Another.
I'm not sure. You're saying that better quality data can result in better results that then cause you to actually be able to identify issues in a better way? I don't see.
No, I'm saying to you that knowledge, medical knowledge increases exponentially, essentially, doesn't it? I think with time, the whole point of research is that medical knowledge is changing. So what is current knowledge today wasn't current knowledge 5 years ago. So things, for example, the example I would give is, for example, if you look at high-resolution MR scans, which may look at bone structure, for example, and things which are natural variants, which would have not affect somebody's health, you may have to investigate because you find them on a high-resolution scan. Is that making sense? Or, for example, prostate cancer is another example. So a lot of people now, this judgment is people who get prostate cancer may never die from that illness, but they will have prostate cancer, which is a slow-growing tumour for many, many years. So you finding the prostate cancer, all it does perhaps is create anxiety, creates investigations, creates cost for the patient as well as for...
Positives, yeah. I think that the sort of broad brush sphere that you put that question in is around sort of false positives. Yes, false positives. And the idea that you pick stuff up that actually doesn't matter, but you weren't picking it up before, and it now matters because you picked it up. Any business in the health and wellness category has to wrestle with that as a reality. And there are people who, quite rightly, are very anti certain types of sort of unilateral population screening, which isn't something that I don't think any of us are interested in doing. And the answer is you have to work with really smart people to try and ensure that you are not falling foul of the false positives trap. But similarly, it oughtn't to constrain forward movement. You know, people picking stuff up early and taking decisive corrective action with a view to living happier and healthier lives is the way that things are going to go. It's the only way that you plug the 22 billion quid funding gap the NHS are facing into. It's the only way that insurers lower the cost of premiums. It's the only way that corporates have healthier teams. So you know that's coming. So it's part of that. It's part of that journey. It just has to be very carefully monitored and managed.
Thank you. And
I completely agree with you. My point was actually, is that being considered? And it wasn't the fact I'm disagreeing. I think completely data is the way forward. I'm 100% on it. But I guess the question is, if it increases costs, that's a risk that has to be mitigated against early. That's what I was asking. So, does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, no, it does. But, yeah, I don't have anything more interesting to add, I don't think.
Could I suggest that you two or three hook up afterwards, in fact, over
So go for a
coffee,
pint, but it's a bit early.
as I need to draw it to a close now. So can I just thank Jamie, Rabin, Jeni and Hamish for a very fascinating panel discussion. Thanks very much.